Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you this afternoon as part of our Emerging Leaders Society's Lunch with Leaders series that we do as we are really looking into additional program for the Emerging Leaders Society. We're really thrilled to be joined with all of you today. My name is Mackenzie Manning. I am the chair of the Emerging Leaders Society and sit on the board of directors of the United Way. In my day job, I am the director of program management in a defense company, Leonardo DRS, working on naval power systems. So this topic today is near and dear to my heart. I'm very excited to be joined by husband and wife team Rick and Kate Durlew, who are going to talk to us about leadership in the STEM industry. So welcome to all of you. I'll give a quick little intro and then talk about some logistics. So Rick is the commercial engines, president of commercial engines and chief commercial officer at Pratt & Whitney. He's been working in the industry for over 25 years in the global aerospace industry. And he is responsible for leading and directing all sales, marketing, and customer support worldwide for Pratt & Whitney commercial engines and IAE. Which includes more than 10,000 orders for the GTF engine family, one of Pratt's largest programs there. So very, very exciting. And thank you for joining us today, Rick. And we have Kate, who is the global senior manager working in shopper marketing and retail activation at the Lego Group. So very exciting work there. Kate's responsible for actively driving strategic insights based on channel and retail trends, macro and commercial economic impact, as well as shopping and consumer behaviors to influence product development and future commercial planning. So some two very interesting leaders that we have here today. We intend this discussion to be a very intimate and open discussion about leadership and philanthropy, as they both are obviously very generous with their time. And so please feel free to drop questions into the chat or to raise your hand. I will be moderating our discussion today, and I have some questions that we've prepared in advance, but please feel free to jump in and participate in the discussion. We purposely keep these as a small group so that we can have real intimate discussions about the topics that we are discussing. So maybe to get us started, maybe Kate, you can talk to us a little bit about how you got involved in the work that you do.
Yep, sure. So thanks everybody for the time today. As Mackenzie was mentioning, I have been at the Lego Group for it'll be 15 years this August, and always working in more of a international shopper marketing or insights, around marketing, generally speaking. Prior to that, I actually worked for a manufacturing company, an OEM, which made ceramic bearing components that were also used in a variety of industrial and manufacturing, different elements and components. So the joke always is going that I went from balls to bricks, going to the Lego Group. So it's, but it is one of those things where like my undergraduate was in French. I ended up then going back to school for my MBA, which just happens to be where I actually met Rick. We met at the University of Connecticut doing our MBA together in the same program, and got into international marketing, and just happened to be very lucky that opportunities kind of presented themselves once I graduated from the MBA program. That the OEM company I worked for was a French-owned company, Saint-Gobain Ceramics, and then having worked there for 10 years and then eventually moved into the Lego Group, as I have a strong connection with the brand and the family values. The Lego Group is still family-owned, privately held. We're on our 4th generation of family ownership, and it just kind of all fell into place for me that way. So a little bit about me and my background.
Great, thanks for sharing, Kate. And Rick, how did you get involved in the work that you do?
So I completed my MBA, as Kate mentioned, back in '98, and I actually had a finance background. I had a finance focus for my MBA, And I wanted to be my dream job would have been going to work at Wall Street, go to a hedge fund or equities. I actually worked at a private placement securitization for bonds firm while I was going for my MBA. But I studied abroad, and at the time the EU was coming together, and I had to do a presentation on EU and effect on US companies. Just so happened that the guy who ran HR at the time, Jack Leary at Pratt, asked me to come. There was this rotation program. I didn't think I wanted to do it at all. I worked at Electric Boat before. I'm thinking I don't want to work at another big defense style company. But I looked into this program. It was an incredible program, 4 rotations, anywhere in the company you wanted to go. And so I had a finance mentor because that's what I thought I wanted to do. And he said, you should go sit in sales and marketing because you don't know the product, you don't know the industry. And probably 6 weeks in that first rotation, I was like, this is where I want to be. I fell in love with kind of commercial aerospace. I always say, like, if I was offered, even before I was an executive role in military business, I wouldn't have taken it. I loved commercial aerospace. I love the airlines, the lessors, the whole industry. It's very passionate, very different than what I experienced at EB. It's a very passionate industry. And so I spent my entire time in mostly customer facing roles. I was since 2012, leading global sales and marketing here at Pratt. And then I took over as chief commercial officer back in like 2016. Again, that's when you think about career and growth. I thought I was in the perfect job, right? I had reached the highest level from an executive standpoint. So I wasn't ladder climbing or career or financially trying to do something. So I was happy. And they came to me just over 2 years ago now, and they asked me to become president of Pratt & Whitney's commercial engine. So in addition to the customer organization I also run all CE operations, all of our commercial operations, so our facilities around the world, repair units, engine centers. I also own what's probably the most important part of the organization is programs. So when we're developing new programs and executing programs, so all the program teams report in through me as well. So today, if you don't know Pratt, I know some of you do, but if you don't know Pratt, we're probably just under a $30 billion company. There's 3 main businesses. There's military, there's Pratt Canada, and then there's commercial. So my business is probably the biggest unit. It's around half, 15 billion of the revenue. And for those of you who know us, or if you Google Pratt or GTF engines, you'd also know we're in the hardest fight of our life right now. We've got some real challenges in front of us that we're years in the making, but we're in the time where we have to deal with it. So it's an incredibly, when I think about my people and my leaders, I think about resilience. I am most concerned about people, to be completely honest, because of the challenges we have in front of us. So it's something I spend probably 50% of my time on, maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe it's 25% of the time on people and concerns around it, probably 50% of the time on our customers, and the other 25% of the time internally. I'm not, even though I own operations, and so this is another leadership skill, even though I own operations, I'm not an operations person. I am a leader. I do run the P&L. But one of the things that make you successful is not yourself, but the people around you. And so having really strong leaders and capable leaders around me help make the entire team a better team. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. I was reflecting on your story and you mentioned about 2 years ago, they asked you to become the president of commercial engines. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the steps along that ladder to get there and what it was like stepping into a real senior leadership role like that?
Sure. And look, I talk about this a lot. I actually, Raytheon is a very strong supporter of our ERGs, our employee resource groups. And we have an annual conference we call Will Rise, where we bring 50 to 100, high pod female leaders to an offsite. And I talked a lot about this. It was just last week in DC, actually, I think it was. And so I'm unique in the sense that we, including me, when I give advice to young leaders, new leaders, or new employees, I talk about getting experiences across the company. The good thing about us as being such a global, big company, there's opportunities that for you to move from aftermarkets to programs to business development to group strategy, right? There's all kinds of really cool things you can go do. And that diversity of experience as you're growing up in an organization is good because you can bring that into every role and have an understanding of the connectivity. I'm a unique animal in the sense that I always was in a customer face. So I tell people, don't do what I did. It just, it just so happened to play out like this. I was always in that kind of a deal guy doing commercial deals with airline customers responsible for it. And like I said, when I started this conversation today, I didn't aspire to become the president of Pratt & Whitney. I remember when they approached me, I'm like, look, if you want me to go do that, I'll go do that. So what I would tell people to get to that level, to get to where I am, is really have that, take on those opportunities when presented. And then there's certain things that you can do with those opportunities. And what I always tell my direct line as well as deep into the organization, there's certain things that you should do. You own your career. You're responsible. You should hold yourself accountable for your career. As other leaders or as peers, we should help those people succeed at their career and provide opportunities for them to go do that. But ultimately, you own your career to go drive that. And so there's things that I always recommend doing, like raise your hand and take ownership and accountability. I think that's very important. You're in a big company like us, you got to be able to work well with teams and communicate well. You got to have a certain level, depending on what field you're in. You got to have in my role, you got to have a certain amount of business acumen. You got to have strong awareness. There's all these factors that help take you to that spot. And if you were to ask me 3 years ago, hey, Rick, you're going to be president of Primary Commercial Engines, I would have said, no, that's not what I want. But remember, I said when I started here, I wanted to be a finance guy. So be open to adjusting or adapting. And today, as I sit here, as hard as it's been the last 2 years, it's really made me uncomfortable, and then figure out how to be to become comfortable being uncomfortable is what I would say. I was so used to a certain thing that anyway. So that's and I'm also long-winded and talk a lot. My wife has learned that I do all the talking, so we have to be fair.
No, absolutely. Thank you
And
for that, Rick.
I'll tell you, in my industry, in aerospace, they don't want to talk to me about engines. They all know Kate works at Lego. They only want to talk to me about Lego. Engineers love STEM, right? Obviously, and they love Lego.
Sure do. Yeah, absolutely. And so Kate, you've obviously had a very successful career and climbing the ladder at Lego. And can you talk a little bit about what your experience has been like?
Sure. Yeah. So I think, and it is slightly different because we are a flatter organization, generally speaking, especially as a family-owned company, a business. And that really prides itself on family and family values, which was, for me, actually, it was really important, as Rick and I were both, came out with our MBA and growing our careers, our individual careers. To be able to have that family value and that flexibility was certainly important because that is a core value that the Lego Group believes in and continues to believe in and foster. So that's something that was always incredibly important. But I think, for me, a big part of it has just been, again, looking at not only the organization and the brand and the values, which was fundamental for me, but even the people. As Rick mentioned too, my direct line manager and managers that I've had over the course of my, 25 years of career, professional experience has been instrumental in supporting and enabling me, to continue to develop. So providing those opportunities, giving me some of those, or giving me the space for some of those stretch assignments. Similarly, to being in a global role, I've had a lot of exposure to other areas of our business, throughout the world, and looking at the various challenges that we might potentially face, you know, in China, in APAC, you know, for Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Western Europe and Central, you know, Europe, as well as the Americas for Latam, Mexico, Canada, and the US. So having that exposure and being able to have that exposure, you know, to the various areas of the business and seeing what is the commonalities or what are the differences that, you know, that we have to try to address from a consumer and shopper marketing behavior, as well as retailers, you know. One of the questions I saw that had come through is like how things have changed in this field. And of course, I mean, not only COVID, but, you know, AI and data analytics have become so instrumental and so important in how we actually have to pivot in the way that we work and actually market and distribute, you know, from an operations perspective as well. So all of those things have been fundamental, you know, in my learning and development as a leader. And then personally, you know, through, as Rick also said, trying to own your own career, it's like putting your hand up for any opportunities that, you know, come up in the organization. Find the things that you're really passionate about and interested in, and really, you know, get involved in those areas. Deb knows that I lead our women in leadership. We call them EAGs instead of ERGs, employee advocacy groups. I've been leading that. We actually started that. Lego never had this in the past, so it's been about 6.5 years now. And I've been leading that group in the Americas. And then sitting in our global team as well. But the more you can get that kind of exposure and put your hand up and just take some risk, you know, in developing those areas, it opens new doors and opportunities of things you may never expect.
You hit on something really interesting, right? You both really alluded to it, the importance of having these networks and being able to build relationships within your organizations and even outside of your organizations. Has mentorship really played a role in your growth as you've continued in your career?
Okay, you can go first.
You want me to go first? So yes, I think formally and informally, right? You know, I think you have different cohorts of mentors depending upon, you know, where or what your need is or where you're looking to continue to develop and get feedback and input. So, you know, I have informal mentors I would consider kind of in my peer group, you know, at the same level of colleagues. But I also seek out mentors and input or feedback providers outside as well, externally, and then even in different facets of the organization. So I think it's so incredibly important to expand your network on that way and just get that input and feedback from people that you interact with in different areas, whether it's on things that you're managing as a project on a day-to-day basis, or even if it's in different circles of, you know, work that you're actually, or connections that you're actually working in. Because I think that input and feedback that you can receive, it's instrumental in terms of, you know, how you need to improve or where you need to focus on from an individual or skill developmental area.
So for me, like, as far as having a mentor or an advocate for me in my career, I would say early in it probably was a more of a formal one, like an assigned mentor that was a healthy and productive relationship. But I also think I got more out of a lot of my informal relationships, like advocacy from senior people I worked with, saw what I was doing, liked what I was doing, and would advocate for me. I think today, like I said, I spend an enormous amount of time with people, right? I do one-on-ones when I'm not traveling. I guarantee you, like today, there was 2 of them. I have them frequently every day. One of the things we're doing better as a company, and you guys should think about it, is for years, using the 3 businesses, Pratt Military, Pratt Canada, and Pratt Commercial, we did well of rotating and getting to know people within that organization, but there's a whole bunch of talent out of your daily life. And so we actually now on the EC at a Pratt level, they bring in people from operations and from engineering and from Pratt Canada, and we call them these get to know sessions. And we do it once a month. We have our talent review, and I'll get assigned 5 or 6 names that in the between that meeting and the next month's meeting, we set up get to know sessions, and they're typically people outside of commercial engines. So I think what I would say is look for opportunities. One, yes, get advocacy, get formal mentorship. It's very helpful in your career. Balance it. You don't want to be a pest, or you don't want to let time go by between sessions where you have enough stuff that's happened that you can get that guidance on. I'm only telling you because sometimes people will overbook, and you're like, you get my point. And so, but they have been it has been a great thing about it, for sure.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from our group while I keep up monopolizing Rick and Kate's time here? Feel free to throw them in the chat, or yeah, Dario.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, by the way, for all the nice advice, both of you, Kate and Rick. Just a quick intro. I'm a Pratt Whitney. I'm in the military engine, work at the F-135 engine in program management. So I'm not commercial, but I'm from Italy. I'm a man. I'm an ally for women. I fully enjoy the ERG concept at our company. I can't speak more higher than about RTX in general. I'm also from Italy, so excuse my my accent and grammar. But I was wondering, how do you manage or juggle family obligations, especially with young kids, with your opportunities that you're presented with, right? B, your drive to get better at your work, right? Because if you do your 8 hours, 40 hours a week and whatnot, it gets you just so much. If you like your job and you want to do something else, well, you stay that half hour or an hour, or you look at your emails afterward, or do whatever, right? How do you juggle life and work at the same time?
How about you go first, Kate?
I was actually waiting for you to go first, Rick.
If you want me to go first, I'll go first. So I'll give you my perspective. And people, I've talked a lot about this inside Pratt. I could not do what I do, and I'm everyone's different. I'm ADD. I can remember when my kids were young, the Rihanna song, work, work, work. All daddy does is work, 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 right? So I can't, I give all the thanks to not just Kate, but to my daughters. They've been an incredible support mechanism. I have for 25 years been traveling nonstop. Now, maybe my daughters don't know anything other than that, but they have been an incredible support for me always. And if I think about the integration, people used to say, work-life balance. A woman who works, well, she's now over in military engines, Jessica Velarde. I think that's public knowledge now. I think she's going, but Jessica's going over to, she said to me, Rick, you don't do work-life balance. You do work-life integration. And so she's right, because being an external person, I would always be on the phone, and I sometimes I have regrets as I'm going to soccer with my kids and I'm on the phone, but they know, every customer knows my kids know the customers, and they know what I do. I talk about them all the time here at work, my wife and kids. So I try to integrate because I have to, because it's hard to separate those two things. But again, it's the most, at the end of the day, what's more important than anything for me is your family, right? Your family is the most important thing. If things go sideways at family, work doesn't, you're not even thinking about work, right? So they've enabled me to really focus on work and have a very rewarding career. And I thank them for that, right? And I don't forget that every single day. Now, Kate is going to tell you it's come at the expense of her career, but I'll let her say that.
I don't know if it's totally at the expense of my career, but I think, so first off too, I will also say, and Dario, thank you so much for the question, even for your comment, because I think that is an ally, right? To be able to, number one, recognize just the burden and socio, I know it's changing a bit, but I think there's just this norm, these socialized norms, that tend to kind of fall more on women, and there is no balance. There really is no balance of work life. It's some things, whether it's either integrated, as Rick said, or if it's more of some things take precedence or priority. I equate it to kind of like taking your foot off or on the gas pedal. It's like, when is your foot on the gas pedal fully looking at stuff at work, or when is it fully on the gas pedal when you're looking at home? But I will also say it takes, the saying of, it takes a village is entirely true. Whether that means it's help, and Rick and I were very fortunate enough to have Rick's sister, my sister-in-law, help us when the girls were really little. So that the two of us could actually travel or do, our professional work jobs. And so she was instrumental, as a full-time kind of nanny for us, my parents to a certain degree. And then even during a period of time when Rick's sister was unavailable to us, we actually hired a nanny to help support. So without that, that there's just, I think it's a really difficult trying to balance that without having a network or support. And at times, even within our neighborhood, if I had the flexibility because I'm in a global team starting at 6 a.m. and usually wrapping up my meetings, at noon or 1 o'clock, then I could be available to support my neighbors, and picking their kids up at the bus stop with our kids, so it's those sorts of things, arrangements, that you kind of start to come into play to try to help balance out, those difficult things. And I would also just say part of it for me, even working at the Lego Group, is that the Lego Group, as I mentioned, it's a family-owned business. The family values are so important to provide that flexibility. And, we have some of the best paternity leave for an American, based in the US. It's 6 months for the primary caregiver and 2 months for the secondary giver. So I think that's a whole other thing too, because we've also seen a lot of males who are stereotypically the secondary provider for paternity leave, not necessarily feeling comfortable taking that, that they feel that it's going to jeopardize their career. So it's an interesting economic or socio-demographic component when you start to look at taking time and how you take that time and what's okay and how it's perceived.
Yeah, I'd add 2 more things. There's no perfect recipe. People are just different, right? What worked for Kate and I may not work for other people. So there's no, this is the right way to do it. Like, I know, like Kate's mom would say, I don't think Kate should work, right? I know that if Kate was at home, it wouldn't be fulfilled. There'd be something missing. And so everybody's different. I would say you got to find out the right mix for you. The other thing I'd say, I have the good fortune, I think at least, and I can only talk at Pratt because I only worked at Pratt, but I think it's the same throughout the company. I encourage people, if they gotta pick the kids up in the morning. This is, never mind COVID, this is pre-COVID, right? And then I can tell you, Chris Callia, when he was in my job, who's now the CEO of All Raytheon, when Chris was sitting in this office I'm sitting in now, I saw him every day. He wouldn't come in before 8:30. He had kid drop off in the morning, and his wife, who was a lawyer, had the afternoon, right? They were a team. So you gotta, I think we're a company that, and I can tell you that if someone's not doing that, one of my leaders is not allowing that flexibility, I would have someone from HR come to me and say, hey, so-and-so is not doing that. We do. So I think we're fortunate enough to work in a company that recognizes the importance of that balance and everyone, not everyone, most people have kids or some responsibility, family responsibility that they need to attend to. And I just think that's an important part of one's career and one's happiness.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your answers, and I could definitely relate or vouch for
Yeah.
Rick's answer on the company.
Yeah.
I see that RTX is really great on the expecting everybody to take their benefits and take this work-life balance as well.
Yeah.
But it is definitely hard. So thank you for.
So Dario, I'll also say, since you went on camera, I have the exact same shirt and I love it because my wife's laughing because every time I wear it, I say it's like a slimming shirt for me.
Well, nowadays, these are my only nice shirts.
Yeah.
I'm just working I'm always displaying these shirts that I get from ERGs or
Yeah, this
Pratt
was
or
our
whatnot.
ERG
So,
event at the hangar, right? The STEM
yeah,
ERG. Yeah.
that's right. That's right. Otherwise, just anyhow. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. That was a great conversation. You both touched a lot on flexibility, right? And we all know that our workplace has changed over the last 4 years. Can you talk a little bit about how now that we're in kind of a real new normal, how has, the impacts of the last few years impacted leadership and growth at your companies?
I'll go first on this one because I'm pretty vocal about this internally. And sometimes when I describe it internally here at Pratt, it sometimes gets perceived wrong. So what do I mean by that? Look, I'm an extrovert, I'm a people person, and I think there's incredible value of having our people together in a team. So when I say that, and I encourage people to, if they're hybrid, to come in the 3 days a week, not everyone likes that, right? I'll be honest, a lot of people like the remote piece of it. What I would say is my vision is what I would call more of a nirvana. So if you think about it, prior to COVID, we were very 5 days a week, nobody worked remotely. And that's just the way it was. Core hours, I can remember hearing that all the time. There's core hours. I'm not suggesting by any means we do that again. And I think technology has allowed us to a lot more flexibility. But I do think that we're a company that recognizes the importance of collaboration and being together and that connection. And so it's important. So I think we're getting more towards hey, we'd like people to be on site 3 days a week if they're hybrid. Then we're flexible around that. If you want to come in every day 10 to 2, okay, that's enough, right? But there certainly is value to that connection. There's also value in hiring really talented people that live in Chicago or live in Denver, that you want them to be, let them stay remote 100% because they have a skill or they have something they're bringing to the table. So we wouldn't have thought like that 5 years ago. So today, we would, if there's good talent that needs to be remote because for their reason, we would still encourage that, hiring those individuals. So I do think we're in a much better. We're never going to go back to 2019. We're not going to be 2020 either, where we're just everyone's on Zoom. But that's something I struggle with, because I know a lot of people find the value of working remotely. I just want that. I just prefer that balance. And we as a company, I'll be completely honest, and the Pratt people here would know, we're not enforcing it. I'm not seeing it enforced by any means. Meaning, what I'm not going over and saying, okay, did you come in 3 days? Right? No one's in. And so for that reason, I don't think we're not getting the full benefit of a hybrid environment. But again, it's such a sensitive and important topic for our employees. I can tell you, it's probably the most emotionally charged dialogue internally at our company. But it's real. That means it's real.
Yep, absolutely. Not surprising, right? We all went home thinking it would be 2 weeks, and here we are 4 years later figuring out what return to office really
Looks like.
looks like. So
Yeah.
I just a anecdote, I worked for Pratt and Whitney for 8 years in my career. And in 2019, I had an hour and a half commute, and I wanted to work from home 1 day a week, and got the we don't have those kind of jobs speech.
Yeah.
So it's definitely been an interesting transition over the last few years, and especially as an emerging leader
Yeah.
in the organization and in the industry. It's nice that technology and updated abilities really have enabled people to work more flexibly, which has definitely, I think, opened up doors, as
Yeah.
we were talking about earlier, for women who might have more of a burden
I totally
on
agree.
them. So that's been very encouraging to see.
But as leaders, here's what we're trying to manage. The example you just gave, that you were simply trying to work from home 1 day a week, and you got that. That's not how we operate. If the other answer they gave you in 2019 was, you know what, we'll let you do it 2 days a week, you would be ecstatic. You'd be like, oh my God, this is fantastic. Now, fast forward to today, people are struggling to come to manage that, right? So
They are, yeah.
So that's the hard part as leaders that we're trying to manage. It's just there's been a shift, right? There's been an expectation, or however you want to call it, shift. But
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's been a real challenge too at the Lego Group, as well as many of you may or may not know, but we are in the process of moving to Boston for our office, which is currently located in Enfield, Connecticut. By 2025, June of 2025, so almost a year from now, we will be in downtown Boston, the greater Boston area, on Boylston Street. And it has been, I have to say, the company has given a long advance notice for employees to try to come to a decision of if they will be willing to relocate, or if they're going to commute, or if they're going to decide to leave the organization, just based on the semantics that they have to try to navigate. Because again, similar to most companies today, post-COVID, we are our corporate and executive leadership team and family are of the mindset that we are a company and an organization that need to be able to collaborate in person and work together. And so there is like a 3-day hybrid, we call it best of both approach that we are working with. And I know I've been in direct dialogues with our executive leadership team, our CEO, that this is a real struggle in terms of, again, how to shift or how to pivot back into the office where we can have productive collaborative meetings in person together, especially while we're navigating a transition into a new office location in Boston. So that has been, it's, Mackenzie, you're talking about like an hour and a half commute, for a lot of people, it's probably, almost 2-hour commute.
Right.
To do 3 days in Boston. And there's been a lot of resistance, from individuals to say, well, why do I have to be there? And that's just that is something that is non-negotiable. But I think to Rick's point, it's not being mandated and governed in that, like, so many hours, what those hours look like, which days, there's the flexibility. It's more of like, what does the productivity look like in terms of your team, in terms of how you collaborate and where and what days or what times. So that's really more of the end game, that our company is trying to get to. And similarly, the part of the reason of even looking at Boston is because, we're going into our next, long-term strategic plan, and looking at the skill sets that are required for us moving forward. And so much of that talent is simply not going to come to Enfield, Connecticut. So a lot of that talent that we're trying to look at and diversify the talent pool of who we're trying to attract into the organization, it's just easier to find a diverse group of skill sets in talent in the greater Boston area, which is a big part of that, long-term
If you're willing to move to Boston as opposed to Enfield, right? If you're coming out of college, If it's Boston or Enfield, I don't know. Most people probably won't choose Enfield.
Exactly.
Fair, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. Other questions on the group here? Maybe we can wrap up with one more question. It's one of my favorite questions to ask and to reflect on myself. What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
You want to go first, Rick?
Sure, you can go first on this one.
So I think like some of the best advice that I have received, I think you need to be, number one, true to yourself, right? And your own personal values, your personal brand and beliefs. So I think that's extremely important, right? Because that's how you will find purpose in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and really want, like, again, self-motivated, and ambition, to be able to actually get up out of bed and go in and do something, that you have to feel like there's a purpose tied to that. So you have to be true to yourself, I think, on that. And that is one thing, that I have heard from previous leaders. We also embody what we call at the Lego group, the leadership playground, where everybody is a leader. It doesn't matter where you are in the organization or what your title is. Everybody is a leader. So it's almost like you have to embrace the growth mindset, where, a growth mindset where you can continue to be curious. You can be brave to actually challenge, or, like, where you disagree with others. And then, of course, be able to be focused on what is most meaningful for yourself and the business, because those are the things that will ultimately drive personal motivation, satisfaction, and then, of course, performance for the organization.
Okay, I'll give you 3 different examples. One of them similar to Kate's. But I remember early in my career, when you're thinking about moving around, and even though I stayed in a customer facing role early in my career, there's many different things I could do in that capacity. I remember somebody saying to me, do something, make sure wherever you're doing it, you want to get out of bed in the morning, drive in the office with a smile on your face, and like what you're doing. Don't take a job that you're because somebody told you to do it, it's really not something that inspires you, or right. So that's one. Second is a very important one that I tell a lot of people. No one told me. I did it though, in my reflection. Don't tie yourself to one person. I can't tell you how many people link themselves to a certain leader who may have some juice at that time, right? People ebb and flow. It's nothing wrong with connecting with that person, but I can remember telling certain senior leaders in our company, you're doing whatever this one leader tells you to do. You're just doing what that person tells you to do, instead of thinking about other options. You just, well, he wants me to do this, so I'm going to go do that. So again, don't tie yourself to any single person. The reason I've survived, I would argue here, is I've never just tied myself to any particular leader. I've worked the entire network, not just one. But I see a lot of people make that mistake. And then another early advice, and it's maybe only relevant for me in my business at Pratt, but you either want to touch the product or the customer. If you want good visibility, you want things like own and drive and passion and see impact, and want impact that's noticeable. You either want to be somehow touching that product, meaning you're in operations, or you're in aftermarket operations, you're at a P&L running an engine center in my example, or you're out driving top line revenue growth, and you can see and touch the fruits of your labor, and you're that person who the customer can connect to, right? But those 3 things, again, and everyone's different. I've said that a couple of times. For me, those 3 things resonated for me growing up here.
Excellent advice. Thank you, both of you. We had one more question come through in the chat from Maya. Do you have any advice on navigating a highly matrixed organization and leading without direct authority?
I'll
Sorry, I
start.
couldn't. I thought I lost my audio for a minute. Hi,
Yeah,
Rick.
no
Thank
worries. So I'm telling you, we had an EC meeting this morning on this, right? We have very much a matrix organization, but we're not doing it well. So it's hard, matrix organizations. What I would say to you, again, I'm reflecting back to my own experience early in my career. And what we had was like there's at Pratt, we have IPMTs, which is integrated product management teams. We also have what's known as CFTs, they're customer focused teams. Those customer focused teams they involve a finance, a lawyer, a customer support person, a salesperson, a aftermarket person. None of them report to you. You have to, so I've had people come to me saying, well, they've never been people leaders, so I don't know if they could be a supervisor in this role. But yet they ran a CFT where nobody reported to you, but you're able to influence them, drive a strategy, right? So some of our best leaders may not have people reporting to them. They're able to influence outside of, because anybody can go tell somebody they work for you, go do this. That's not leading. Leading is getting people around you inspired, in my mind, and aligned around a common goal that you're all rowing in the boat to, right? And if you can do that and get people around you and they don't report to you, but you're a team of that's leadership to me. So it's hard in matrix organizations. I don't have, if I had a good answer, I would be telling people this morning what the answer is. It's hard. So, Kate.
Yeah, I would just add one other thing to that too. I think that, yeah, you got to look at your circle of influence. How can you influence people, or where can you get like your cohort that you're influencing and actually showing, because if you get enough momentum or enough awareness and buzz around that, it will become very evident, that of what the work is that you're doing, and how you're driving a portion of the work forward in a specific area. And I also think don't shy away from trying to find, like one area where you really think you can, a gap or a problem or an opportunity where you can really influence and make the difference in that outcome. And make sure that there is somebody, of a senior or more senior role to be aware of the work that you're doing, because I think especially and I hear this from individuals who are very early on in their career, that they think if they do the work that the recognition will be automatic and then they'll get promoted. And a lot of times even direct line managers may not always know what you are doing on a day-to-day basis, or what the output of what you're doing. So I think in those one-to-ones or in those catch-ups, I think it's so incredibly important to be able to speak to and showcase the work that you are doing and driving, because it won't speak for itself. And that is something that I think the more that you can start to influence and demonstrate and showcase those things, the more, it will showcase those transferable skills or the impact that you're having in the organization.
Thank you for that, Kate. And I'm sad to hear Lego is leaving our site, our Connecticut. We've been struggling here to keep Pratt Whitney stay. It's been in the news many times, but now Lego is leaving. It's too sad.
I know it is. Trust me, it'll be 50 years, by the time we close the doors in Enfield, and it has been a huge emotional challenge for many folks in the organization.
I think we have time for one more question. Daria, you have your
I
hand
have a
raised.
quick question that ties back to the previous question, but I really enjoyed this question as well. So how do you gauge, or when can you feel that is the right moment for a change, or how do you understand that you're not in a good position, right? How do you evaluate a good position over a bad position, right? Or when can you say, you know what, this is not worth it. I have to look elsewhere, whether it's a job or a program or a project, whatever it is, right? When do you know that it's time to cut that in a sense, so to speak?
So look, what I would say, at first I thought you were talking about just the general position of the business. I think I know you're referring to like if you're in a job in a role that what I would tell people is you got to give it a year. I've had people go into roles and all of a sudden 2 months in, they're like, oh, this isn't what right. You got to give it a year, right? Because if you just leave, it sends the wrong message. So you gotta do the best you can. But after that year, if you're like, this isn't the right fit, I think people say, you know what, you gave it enough time to see if it works. You don't want to like make a move and then immediately say, oh, this is a mistake, I'm out. Because you got to show an attempt to work through it. And I think it takes a year. And I can tell you more times than less, people are right with their right instincts. They're like, after that year, they do move. But there is occasionally, maybe 25% of the time, people say, wait a minute, I ended up growing into this role and liking it and staying on. So again, it's not scientific data, but my instincts would tell me when you're in that role for 60 days and you're saying, uh-oh, most of the time they're probably right. It's not the right fit. Maybe it's they don't have the heart and they're not giving it enough of a chance. But for whatever reason, that would be my recommendation to somebody coming to talk to me. I know, Kate, yours is different.
Yeah, no. I think a year is definitely something. That's what we look at a year before trying to even move into a different role or opportunity. But I think even in terms of, even if it's on a day-to-day and project basis, we're really big on trying to look at your own your insights, when it comes to your own individual personality, what your strengths are. We do a lot like with coaching, kind of opportunities of like, where do you, what are you really good at and what are you really passionate about? Because if you can get those two things incorporated into a role or a project or a position, then, it's just going to be intrinsically motivating to you. So I think those are certain things that I always go back to, like, and especially in our team, right? Like we've had very, very open dialogues of who's good at what. Some people are really good at like Excel and, cross tabs and, analyzing things, and other people are good at PowerPoints or whatever, right? The case may be, I'm minimizing it for effect, but that's really, I think, when you're looking for somebody, knowing what your strength is and what you really enjoy, and then knowing who else might be able to help complement that, whether they're in your team or outside of your team, I think is always a really good way to try to kind of help navigate certain things that you may be questioning, because of course there's always going to be aspects of your day-to-day job that you just don't enjoy. But I think it's more of like, how do you try to complement that in an area, or finding a particular person who's really good at helping you, through those areas and make you shine.
You appreciate both of your responses. And I wanted to also make a quick comment on Maya's question earlier and Kate's response about make your work known. I took a class on negotiation just recently in Boston, and they touched upon the making concessions and making it known. Otherwise, they're not really, they don't come across as a concession, right? And that kind of ties back to if you're, it's like the example of if a tree falls in the forest and nobody sees it, did it actually happen, right? So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you all. And thank you all so much for being with us this day and spending this hour with us. Thank you very much to Rick and Kate for joining us. A couple of plugs from the United Way before I go. If you enjoyed being with us today, we have many more events like this coming up, and a lot of opportunity to continue to engage with leaders in our area, as well as some great other philanthropic endeavors. A couple of things that are on the horizon. We have some volunteer opportunities with our Power of the Purse event on June 6th from 11 to 1:30. It's really a spectacular event at the convention center. And Rita Moreno is our keynote speaker this year, so it's going to be a fantastic event. We also are focusing on merging leaders as part of our Centennial Gala coming up in the fall. So we're very excited about that. So if there's any interest in being involved with that, there's lots of opportunities. We'll continue to do we have 2 more of these Lunch with Leaders planned in 2024. So all the details will be in our newsletter. And so there'll be a lot of other opportunities to join. So we've also been very graciously gifted some wonderful giveaways from Lego as part of participating in this. And so we would like to ask that everybody who was on the call today, please confirm their address so we can get our wonderful gifts to you. So thank you again. If anybody is interested in learning more about the Emerging Leaders Society, you can reach out to me or anybody at the United Way. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Rick. It was nice to meet you, Kate.